thing that we are going to do, we are going to invite you to take a stroll through our restored military sections. Obviously, you can see the one that's right behind us, but American Legion 1 is toward the front, right behind the Monument of the Unknown Dead, which was also restored. So please take a few minutes and do a stroll, and then we'll continue with the program. First individual that I am going to introduce is Chaplain Karen Street, and she is going to do the opening prayer.
Please uncover, and good morning, and God bless you. Let us offer a prayer for the completed work at historic Fairview Cemetery in Bernalillo County. Dear God, we gather today with gratitude in our hearts for the dedicated efforts that have breathed new life into the hallowed grounds of historic Fairview Cemetery. With reverence, we acknowledge the souls who rest here, some memorialized, some unmarked, but all contributing to the rich tapestry of Albuquerque's history. We lift our voices in thanksgiving for the $300,000 appropriation approved by the County Commission. This generous support has enabled the preservation and restoration of areas within the cemetery, ensuring that the final resting place of approximately 500 veterans remains dignified and honored. As we stand on this sacred soil, we recognize the significance of the two American Legion burial areas. Heavenly God, bless this place of memory. May the winds that sweep across these fields carry whispers of gratitude and remembrance. May the sun's warmth touch each headstone, a gentle reminder of lives well lived. And may the moon, rising over the silent rows, illuminate the path to eternal peace. We extend our heartfelt appreciation to all those who labored tirelessly. Pluma Construction, the New Mexico Department of Veteran Services, and the caretakers of historic Fairview Cemetery. Their hands have lovingly tended to the past, ensuring that our fallen heroes are never forgotten. My favorite words, that our heroes are never forgotten. As we gather here, we pledge to continue our efforts. Let us raise funds, hold observances, and honor the memory of those who have served. May their legacy inspire us to build a world of compassion, unity, and lasting peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Karen. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now I would like to introduce the American Legion Post Honor Guard, and they will be doing a salute to the veterans as well as taps.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we will commence with military honors. Military honors will consist of 3-round volleys. For those of sensitive hearing, be cautious and wear and do precautionary hearing for your hearing. We will also be playing taps. For those military personnel, you may render a salute. For those non-military personnel, right hand over your heart is a proper salute for our fallen heroes. And in conclusion, we will be folding the flag and presenting it today. Thank you again. detail, attention! Position, march. Present, arms. Order, arms. Left, please.
Present.
Fire! Ready. Aim. Fire! Ready. Aim. Fire! Bugler! Sound 10!
At this time, you may take your seats. President of the United States and the United States military, we grateful nation. We are thankful to Bernalillo County for all their support, for honoring our veterans for their service.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. What we want to do now, with the deepest emotion, unfortunately, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the commissioners, county commissioners. Thank y'all so much for what y'all have done for us. The Department of Veteran Services, Plumes, Construction, my fellow board members, our president, Gail Rubin, our other board members, Ed, Pam, and Lisa, and Susan, who hides all the time. I am totally dumbfounded that this has actually been accomplished. So Ed and I don't know whether we've mentioned that we have adopted the military section, so we will be in charge of maintaining the military sections throughout the cemetery. Thank you. And I have recruited some American Legion members as well as VFW members to help in that respect. So I'm really, really fortunate to have some friends in those areas. So now we're going to start the program with our speakers. And the first speaker will be our president, Gail Rubin. Oh, you need the mic.
Yes, thank you, Sara. In 1880, the railroad came to Albuquerque, and it changed this town and New Mexico incredibly. Imagine 1880 in this spot where we are standing or sitting. It was a sandy mesa east of Newtown, Albuquerque, about 3 miles from where all of the growth was happening. And people were starting to be buried here because the ground is sandy and there was nothing out here. Maybe you've seen that picture of UNM's Hodgkin Hall out there in the mesa all by itself. That was a cemetery too. Over the years, it became the place to be buried. The Albuquerque Cemetery Association was started in 1882. Ownership of the cemetery changed over the years. The Memorial Park was established in the 1930s. American Legion I was started in the early 1920s and had burials up to 1945. And that included some of our Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War. This section was started during 1945, and we have burials up to 1988, including veterans from our 20th century wars. When the ownership of the cemetery started changing hands, there began to be, unfortunately, a deterioration of how this part of the cemetery was maintained. And a nonprofit organization, Historic Fairview Cemetery, received the ownership of these grounds in 2011-2012 was when it was started. I became president in March of 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. But in these 4 years, we've made great progress helping to maintain the cemetery and share its history. That's our mission. And a few years ago, our next speaker, John Garcia, was here to visit his father's grave, and he was appalled by what had happened to our veteran burial areas. Jim Burdine also had noticed and put in a word with the Department of Veteran Services about what was happening or not happening here. in terms of honoring our veterans. Now, John and I have some history. Over 2 decades ago, the Sacred Heart Church in Morelos recovered a bell that had once belonged to the church. And after 9/11, John actually got several I-beams from the Twin Towers after that terrorist attack and had them transported here to Albuquerque. He is a miracle man in terms of making things happen. And yay, John. Why don't you come on up and share your part of the story in making this happen? You're our next speaker. But yes, I wrote about John in Catholic Digest magazine, and that's how I found out about him. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Gail. Appreciate that. Yeah, that was quite an event, bringing those beams from the World Trade Center, and Gail was contracted to write the story about how we brought the beams from New York and gave a community of Morelos their voice back. And now when the bells ring, we're reminded of 9/11, the sacrifice that men and women make to support this country, a great country of ours, and hence why we're also here. As Gail mentioned, a few years back when I was Secretary of Veteran Affairs, sir, and I just want to thank you for what you're doing now, serving our veterans here in the state of New Mexico, Secretary Herrera. This whole place was covered with weeds. The graves were toppled over, and you know, working for Veteran Affairs and working in the VA where it's etched on the walls that to support the men and women and make sure that where they're buried, the gravesite is maintained for perpetuity. And what you have here is a fine example of the state coming together to support that. But I just do want to recognize and thank Gail Rubin, Sara Sather with her husband, board members of the Fairview Historic Cemetery, Secretary Herrera, and Department of Veteran Services and his great staff, the county commissioners for your hard work, Julie Baca, is she here? Particularly Julie Baca, because I remember we came out here. My dad's buried over here. My mother insisted to have him buried close. We wanted to put him in Santa Fe. I was here paying respect to my father on Memorial Day, and I walked over here and just noticed a group of ladies out here pulling weeds. And they're out here just cleaning up the best they could, this very historic cemetery. And I thought what a shame it is that they have no other help than what the help you're recruiting. Immediately we went to go see Julie Baca, and without saying no or what or where, because her father's also a veteran, she had that compassion, and she talked to the county commissioners. Next thing we knew, we had $300,000. I can't thank you guys enough, Bernalillo County, for what you did to make this possible. But that wasn't the end of it. We needed a fiscal agent, and of course, the Department of Veteran Services immediately stepped up with Ed Mendez's help. We had a meeting with the secretary. Ed Mendez took the lead on that. And it's the community coming together to protect and preserve the past and bring it into the future. And that's what the Historic Cemetery Board does. What you have here is people that were once community leaders in their community here. Mayors, governors, legislators, soldiers, family members were buried here. But at that time also, they buried us, all of us, in different groups. African Americans buried over in this section, Native Americans over here, little children over there, veterans right in here. Community leaders are buried over here. It's a unique cemetery. But the fact that my veterans were laid to rest and there was no longer perpetuity maintaining their graves in a shrine environment really bothered me. But when we visited with Julie and we talked about this, immediately she says, let's do it. I mean, it was like, I looked at Gail and we were stunned how quick that was, your decision, because you knew the value of this. And then presented to the county commission, they knew the value of it, because we all have veteran members in our family. You know, from the early descendants came up the community rail, we were citizen soldiers, so I just want to thank you for recognizing that, Julie. I've got some comments I want to make, if you don't mind, I'd like to share them with you. You know, 144 years ago, this, as you just mentioned, came into existence. The first burial, I believe, was 1881, and that was the beginning of the railroad. My grandfather, my great uncles on both sides of my family worked for the Santa Fe Railroad. This was where they buried everybody. But I want to remind everyone, it's not just all the other graves that are here. It's those that have served with honor and dignity, wore the American uniform, that were buried here. And the fact that Department of Veteran Services, as a state agency, is here to pay respect says how important it is to make sure that our veterans are buried with dignity and their shrine is in perpetuity maintained. So I would just want to remind everybody, if you don't mind, I've wrote these down, I just want to repeat them if I could. We're here today to honor our service members and to remember their sacrifices they have made and to the courage it takes to defend honor, duty, and country. We're here today to honor our veteran heroes, to remember their achievements, their courage, and their dedication, and to say thank you for their sacrifices. A person can't help but feel awed by the enormity of what you all have encountered and what we've encountered, especially our veterans. So we stand in the midst of patriots and the family and friends of those who have nobly served our country. Today we gather here not to honor a special person or a significant event that may have changed the course of history. Instead, we are here to pay respectful tribute to those proud and noble individuals who served our country when called upon and wore with pride these distinguished American uniform. We're here to remember them in perpetuity. It's been recorded that from the beginning of our country, over 40 million soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen have participated in our country's wars. And of that number, 23 million servicemen and women are living, and more than 1 million have died in combat. Since World War I, more than 142,000 were captured and interned as POWs, and over 85,000 courageous men and women who have served our country in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Operation Iraqi Freedom, are still missing and unaccounted for. They defended the founding principles of our great nation, and we're here today to remember them. Throughout the state of New Mexico, there are 175,000 veterans that share a long and rich military legacy of honor, duty, and service that dates back several generations. Many New Mexicans that are buried here in this historic cemetery are descendants of those first citizen soldiers that trekked up the Camino Real over 400 years ago. There are also those here on these grounds that served during the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, and they fought in Gettysburg to Glorieta and Valverde in the Spanish-American War. They served in New Mexico Territorial Cavalry during the state's early days of territorial days at places like Fort Craig, Fort Sumner, Fort Stanton. There are the legendary valiant Buffalo soldiers that are laid to rest here in these grounds, and those of our countrymen who fought and died while in the service to our country from the muddy fields of France during World War I to my father's generation, known as the greatest generation who served the world with tyranny during World War II. We're here to remember them. There's also the noble and proud Navajo code talkers whose heroic efforts helped defeat Japan, and those New Mexicans of the infamous Bataan Death March, whose place is firmly planted and it stands as a lesson to our country that the price of freedom is often dear, and I believe no American group of men in uniform ever paid more dearly than the men who served in Bataan and those who are in New Mexico National Guard, 200th and 515th Coastal Artillery. They're buried here. They served with dignity and honor under the worst of human conditions, starvation, isolation, torture, and present threat of death. Yet during their darkest hours, they demonstrated remarkable personal courage, unwavering devotion to family and country. Their strength is a testimony to our freedom of as Americans and our character. There are those who fought in the frozen hills of Korea, and we're here to remember them. And my generation must never forget those proud young men who fought in the steamy jungles of Vietnam, or a whole new generation of young men and women who have served in Iraq, Afghanistan. They're buried on these grounds. Let me just get this. My fingers are too fat. So with honor and distinction, those young men that also served in the Gulf War in Iraq, we're here to remember them. So the veterans here today are those that are buried here and across our nation fully understand that our pledge to our flag is real and meaningful, and that our oath of enlistment did not vanish once we took the uniform off. It's veterans serving veterans, that's why we're here. to ensure veterans helped clean this cemetery up. They realigned the stones. The state got involved, the county got involved, Albuquerque was involved, and veterans taking care of veterans. So our flag is real and it's meaningful when we took our oath of enlistment. It didn't vanish once we took our uniform off. So we understand the meaning of duty, honor, and country. So let's remember them all. So let us today remember that the price of freedom and the strength of our nation is the price paid by our veterans, that it's real. Real as life lost, as horror endured, and as real as body torn and disabled. So in closing, I'd like to just say, this is an observance, or this observance, such as we're doing today, should not just be an observance of past sacrifices, as stated by an American poet, but it should be a reminder to our children that the torch of freedom is theirs to carry forward. And that duty, honor, patriotism is a responsibility of each generation. And you cannot regulate to stone and mortar merely to remember, but that these are values to nourish and maintain in our schools for each generation to come. So as an American, I honor you for your efforts. As a veteran, I salute you. And I ask our Lord God to bless our veterans and all those who served our great country, and bless all those who love them, and bless their families. And may we always be a grateful nation, respecting the contributions, heroic sacrifices, and untimely death of all our veterans. So with that, I just want to thank all of you for being here today and honoring our veterans that are buried here in a fashion in which they deserve. They've worked hard to preserve our great country, no matter what time they served. Those of us that served in combat, I don't care if it's Vietnam, Iraq, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Spanish-American War, we all served the same. We all felt the same. We all missed our homes. And when I die, I'll be buried with honor. I know the Department of Veteran Services right now is working on fulfilling the fact that when Santa Fe Cemetery closes, by 2030, there will be a brand new cemetery here in Albuquerque. I know they're working on that, and I think that RFP comes out this month, as a matter of fact. So there'll be many people applying for that and trying to build a new national cemetery here in Albuquerque, and we'll maintain and make sure it's maintained in a shrine environment like you've done here. So congratulations, and a round of applause to the Fairview Historic Cemetery for your achievements. God bless you guys. Thank you.
I am going to have Adriann Barboa, our Commissioner for District 3, come and speak for us, with us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this honor. I was sad I was going to miss it, and so I'm really grateful for making the room so that I can be here and be in the next place I have to be. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. Herrera. I'm Adriann Barboa. I'm so honored to serve as Bernalillo County Commissioner for this district here in District 3. And I actually live, I've been telling everybody I've talked to today that I just live on the other side of the cemetery, and I live in the home that I grew up in. So even as a kid, we always would talk about the cemetery and those old graves, and kids, when you're coming home from school on the way home, we're like, do you dare to walk through that side of the cemetery where those old 1800 graves? And I remember being a young person, especially teenagers, you have stories about the neighborhood or the cemeteries. And I remember even riding my bike through here and seeing these really old grave sites with dates that I couldn't even put my mind around of how they were buried here. And I just lived down the street, and these were from so long ago. But what it reminds me of today and now as an adult that I get to look back is that we have been so honored to live in this history of our communities, this history of our families, of our veterans, of Albuquerque, of Bernalillo County. And so I'm very honored to be here today. I want to also thank Historic Fairview Cemetery. You all are amazing. I think that this idea to preserve this is sacred work. And I just thank you for taking the time and the commitment to do this sacred work. I thank the commission, and I really want to honor our county manager, Julie Morgas Baca. When I heard it, I had already been talking to, yes, please, let's give her a round of applause. I was, when I had talked to Janet and some of the others that had been doing the work here, and they told me, oh, you know, we need some help. And when I heard that they had talked to the county manager and that she was willing, and I was just like so amazed at her leadership, at her willingness to see something that other people might not see the value in. And that's because of her leadership to say, no, this is important. Our veterans are important. Having a place, a sacred place with dignity and respect for our veterans to lay in peace and rest is important. And I'm getting a little emotional because I didn't think it was going to happen. I was new to the commission, and I really myself didn't think it was going to happen. So I am truly honored and grateful. It makes me feel like I can be a true ambassador for the county and the work that we get to do. So I just wanted to say, I wrote just a few words, hopefully not too much, that it's an honor to protect, restore, remember, and recognize all of our veterans, including those who do not have as much as an identity, who are many may think are the least among their brethren because they're not cited and they're considered the unknown. Maybe the least recognized for their value or their accomplishments, but they too did pay the ultimate sacrifice in the name of protecting freedom, family, community, and the United States of America. We get to live in this beautiful, historic site, and as County Manager Baca has put in front of us, that we can actually honor these lives with dignity and respect in these sacred ceremonies, not only one time, but every year. And this gives us a place to honor that sacredness, to honor our fallen heroes. So again, I just want to say that this work is sacred work. So I appreciate each and every one of you that has picked up rocks, moved dirt, went and took a chance to ask a county manager for the funding needed to make it happen, and for the spark of life and energy that you have brought to this community. So I'm honored that we get to do this, but I also am just so grateful because, like I said, I've lived here my whole life, and this section of the cemetery has been overlooked, underserved. Not anybody paid much attention to, except for some maybe teenagers making stories about ghosts or whatever. And now I've already seen, just since the start of this, the vibrancy that it's been brought back. I've seen the life that in death these soldiers, these families, these people have brought back to our whole community. This Southeast Albuquerque, isn't always looked upon with the greatest light. And so to see the life that in death these honorable soldiers can bring back to our community, and that the county, the state, and the Veterans Affairs can put investments in and that improve our entire neighborhood. So I just want to thank you. I'm honored to serve. I hope to always be back, and I live down the street, so I will continue to come by and see and be a part of the life you're giving here. Thank you.
New Mexico Department of Veteran Services, Cabinet Secretary Jamison Herrera. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody, and first of all, it's an honor to be here on behalf of all the veterans of the state of New Mexico to essentially put the beginning touches to work that has just begun. We look around this cemetery, there are almost 500 veterans buried throughout this cemetery. We've done a phenomenal job working as a community, as a village. We talk about this all the time as we are raising our kids, as we are honoring our community and our veterans, that it takes a village. And that is essentially how I see my job as the Department of Veterans Secretary. Is I'm not in charge of anything other than to synchronize the efforts of our community engagements, that we can bring together the American Legion, the VFW, our community volunteer groups, our local contractors, Team New Mexico, coming together in every small community that we can arrive at to honor our veterans for their service and sacrifice. And there's an extension of those veterans is their survivors. there are families, many generations, as was so eloquently put by Mr. Garcia, that have served and are buried here. There are probably 4 or 5 generations of families that may still come here to honor those individuals who gave the last full measure on behalf of their country. So for us to be able to come and do this today is an immeasurable task, but I'm going to ask more of everybody, because this all began with volunteers pulling weeds that were noticed by somebody honoring their veteran. Volunteer, notice if something needs to be done, speak up, get it onto the right ears, say something. I was talking to a couple of the board members earlier, and we talked about the questions that never get asked. Our vice chair for the American Legion, and as a former educator, the question that is the worst question is the one that's never asked. Had they never asked for help, this may not have ever taken place. They would continue to have done their hard work as a historic foundation to do their very best. But we know resources are hard to come by a small group. But a small group combined with other small groups, we become a larger group. We get heard. So that's what I'm asking everybody in the community. As we come upon our Memorial Day in the next month, don't wait for Memorial Day to memorialize our veterans and our families and our legacy of honor that we have in the state of New Mexico. If you see something, say something. Get out there and do something to ensure that we as small communities start small and gain that momentum and continue to roll. So that is my charter as a secretary and a challenge to Team New Mexico. I do want to read off, because I don't want to forget anybody. Obviously, John Garcia is a former cabinet secretary of DVS, and I dare say that he has done every job after that in the state of New Mexico. And to say he's a miracle worker is to say very little of his efforts. His heart is huge, and he's obviously a servant leader. And thank you, Mr. Garcia, for all your mentorship and your leadership for the state of New Mexico and honoring our veterans every single day that you are on this earth. Thank you. I do want to also thank the historic Fairview Cemetery Board, Gail Rubin, Department of Veteran Services, the county manager, Julie. You know, your name's in lights today, and all because you decided. And that's critical. I mean, you're using your influence to do the good of the people for the county and our state. So thank you so much. And obviously, our Bernalillo County Commissioner and everybody who's been involved here. The influence, again, to get this done. Pluma Construction Systems. He himself, Mr. Chris Pacheco, the owner, I know he said, I just signed the checks, I showed up, but he's also a fellow veteran. He's a decorated Army officer, airborne ranger, and he ensured that the work here was done with intent, not just as a contractor, moving dirt and raising headstones, but with intent out of the respect as a fellow veteran. The sites that were done here, obviously behind us, the monument of the unknown dead was in bad disrepair, and that was actually refurbished based on a lot of efforts by a lot of volunteers, the county commission, and several others doing the research to find out what this place started in 1881 when it was open, what it looked like. And as we progressed, Mr. Garcia stated how different this cemetery is, and maintaining our history, how it was as it is and as it will continue to be, is because of the efforts of this historic foundation and all the volunteers who were behind that to ensure that it was put back as it was intended. So thank you very much for doing that and preserving our history. And lastly, I would like to thank our staff by name. I've been in the position for 6 months today as the Department of Veteran Services Secretary. It feels a little bit longer than that. But it's because every day I wake up and I get to continue to serve. It's a blessing for me to be able to continue to do that for our veterans in our state. But the people in DVS who have been working so diligently on this program for the last 2.5 years, and that would be our finance team, Janelle Lucero, who basically took the funds that were provided as a fiduciary agent and making sure that we got every last benefit of those funds that were available. And Randy Pettis, who's our contracting officer, making sure that everything was put in place. And obviously Ed Mednis, Dave Walker, and Diane. The whole cemetery staff has been working on this as a major objective to ensure that this was done right and on time. Obviously, many constraints in the construction world that we can appreciate over the last few years, the cost of materials and everything, but I want to ensure that everybody understands the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, all because of a volunteer agency that stood up and said, we need help, let's do what's right. So I thank you so much again. Please give them a round of applause for the Historic Foundation. And lastly, I just want to ensure that it is very clear to you that we have so much more work to do in our great state, not just in the county of Bernalillo, but every small town throughout New Mexico that has these same cemeteries that we can start looking after and getting there. That is not an offer from me, but it's a challenge to everybody else, because we can't do anything alone, but together we can do so much more. Thank you so much.
The next person that I'm going to ask is Julie Morgan Bacas. Please join us at the podium. And we thank you so much for what you have done for us.
Thank you. So it's not very often that we gather to celebrate here at the Fairview Cemetery, but you know what? That's what we're doing today. It is a celebration. It's a true celebration. And we're honored, and I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming and asking and making that request and giving us the privilege of honoring our heroes who will never be forgotten. What a worthy cause, and probably one of the easiest decisions I had to make. But I will tell you, it's because of the trust and support of our county commission, and it's also about the support from our staff. And I want Lisa Sadia White to come up here because she is the backbone, her and her amazing staff. Diane, thank you, but Lisa, I want you to come up because when I said yes, then it was, you just don't say yes and it gets done. There's things that have to be done. There's a resolution that goes in front of the commission. There's a procurement method that has to be done. And so she's the brains behind the operation, and she's the backbone of all of this. So I want to give her my thanks, my deep thanks. She's my partner in crime. I've known her for a long time, and she's the reason that I'm able to get a lot of things done, a lot of things accomplished. So I just want to thank you all. I want to thank John Garcia. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. We've known each other for many, 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 many years. We go back. Gail Rubin and the staff from the Historic Fairview Cemetery Board. Thank you all for just again giving us the opportunity. We really, really appreciate it. So with that, I'll go ahead and give it back to you, and I wish you all a beautiful day, and again, just thank you all for the opportunity and the privilege to serve our forgotten heroes. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call out the president of Pluma Construction, Chris Pacheco. Very nice meeting you finally.
First of all, I'm going to start out by saying there is no way I'm going to be as eloquent as everybody that spoke before. Absolutely no way. Like General Herrera just said, I'm an old Army Ranger, and public speaking is not my forte. So I just, first of all, I'm not surprised that John Garcia had something to do with this. Just absolutely not surprised. I'm humbled and honored that our construction company had a role in this. Yeah. Excuse me. Public speaking makes me nervous. I think about the veterans. I get a little bit emotional, but I am very humbled and honored. Second generation veteran. My son's currently serving, so I'm just happy that we were able to get the work done, and I'm going to cut it short, but I want Armando to stand up, please. And I know he's not used to this, but this young man is responsible for everything that happened here. He led the crews to put this together, and to see a young man like that be able to put this together and manage that type of project is impressive, and we thank you. We thank you, and the veterans thank you. Thank you all for your time this morning. Have a great day.
And yes, we do appreciate those men that were here at the cemetery day in and day out. And removing those stones, that was a hard job they were doing. But y'all did a fantastic job. Thank you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, it concludes our ceremony. I do want to again thank everyone for coming here today, helping us honor those who made this possible.
Still mourning, great. I just want you to know I've just been sitting over there trying not to bawl my eyes out. On a personal side, before the prayer, I remember coming out with my then commander, Yvonne Harrison from Post 95, and we were cleaning up out here. It was myself and Alexander Cole coming out here on Saturdays, and we were so heartbroken. And I remember one of my prayers was, can we do anything about this? And I'm glad to stand in this day saying it has been done. And we thank God for that. All right, I'm okay now. I got that out. If you are able to stand, please rise and uncover. Dear God, as we stand on this threshold of completion, our hearts overflow with gratitude. We have witnessed the culmination of dedicated efforts, the weaving together of purpose and passion. In this sacred space, we invoke your presence, the one who orchestrates beginnings and endings. We thank you, Lord, for the completed work here at historic Fairview Cemetery. The soul beneath our feet cradles stories, some etched in granite, others whispered by the wind. Here lie the brave, the forgotten, and the silent history. We honor their sacrifice, their service, and their legacy. We lift our voices in praise. We have created a bridge across time, a bridge that spans generations, connecting us to those who rest beneath these ancient trees. We offer a benediction. May the winds carry their valor, the sun warm their memory, and the moon illuminate their peace. Dear Lord, as we depart from this consecrated and sacred ground, may we carry forth the spirit of restoration. Let our hands be extensions of grace, our voices champions of remembrance. May we continue to honor those who serve, not merely in words, but in deeds. So in unity, faith, and strength, we step into the world beyond these gates. May our lives be living benedictions, a symphony of compassion, resilience, and unwavering commitment. Amen.